little boy, probably 6, 7 years old, but that encounter left a mark on me, left me with something I haven't forgotten. My father was an architect and a surveyor at the same time. And I come from Nigeria. He had been given a contract by the government of Nigeria to build a dam. If you know the northern part of Nigeria, there is a Lake Chad. It's one of the very few lakes in the northern part of Africa. And borders 4 countries: Chad, Niger, Nigeria, and Benin Republic. And so the Nigerian side wanted to dam it so that we could get some hydro electricity from it. And my father was the architect that designed the dam and also supervised the building. And when it was done, they gave him an all expense paid trip around the country, which included a visit to the dam. And so this was what we were doing. We were touring the dam, and if you know Lake Chad, it's big, but it does have hippopotamus, it has elephants, it has crocodiles and stuff like that. And so apart from damming it, they had channeled it. So the part that came into Nigeria was channeled and dammed at about 12 miles up into the lake. And so we went on a tour. We had a huge yacht. This was in 1976. We had a very big boat that came, picked my family, picked my dad, my mom, my siblings. There was my father's personal assistant. We had house help, 2 house helps, and 2 engineers, 1 security. So about 12 people on the boat, and we started on this journey. We got to a point, we saw crocodiles, we saw elephants, we saw hippopotamus, we saw all of those, and it was fun. As a little boy, I was probably around 6, 7 years old then. This was around 2:33 in the afternoon. It was hot, so they put the canopy over the boat, and then we sat on chairs watching. It was a spectacle to behold. That can imagine in 1976. So it was fun, and I was a little kid. I was really enjoying it. We got to a place where the boat was. They turned off the boat engine, and then the boat was just rocking, and then they told us that those were hippopotamuses trying to capsize the boat, and stuff like that. So, we took note of it, and there was a mile marker that I remember, that told us how far offland into the water that we had gone. So we went on, went further into the lake, came to the mouth of the lake where it was the international boundary. We didn't cross. We just looked around, turned around, and we were going back. We got to that place where the mile marker that I had remembered was, and the next thing we heard was the engine of the boat exploded, lifted off the boat, and fell into the water. Right at the point where we had been told that hippopotamuses had tried to capsize the boat and all of that. And this was around 5:25 p.m. Mosquitoes were crazy all over us, and we spent the next 1 hour at that one spot. My father was fighting off hippopotamuses and crocodiles with a paddle. You can imagine a boat that is not supposed to be paddled. So, a paddle is nothing, so he would run to the front to whack one elephant, then run to the other side, whack a crocodile. And it's fun, funny part of it. But that left me with such an impression, about what a father was, or what a leader was, or what a man that has a responsibility was. I watched my father fight for his family. My mom, we had the last girl then, who is grown up and married, and I think a medical doctor now, but she was just a little girl then. And my mother sang, my mother used to be Catholic, now she's a Christian, born again, but she used to be Anglican, I beg your pardon. And there's those hymnals, if you know the hymnals, called ancient and modern hymns, so we teased my mother that she sang all the songs from page 1 to the end, because she just started singing. That was all she could do, and then she had to kind of veil herself to cover the little child so that mosquitoes won't get to the child. And we all had to be covered up. I didn't want to be covered up. I left my head open so I could see what my dad was doing. and we had assistants, so they were helping out, but there was just one paddle, and my father said, no, I am handling the paddle. It's my family at stake here. And then after 1 hour, finally we got through to somebody on the radio, and they told us it would take 2.5 hours. The closest boat to us was a dredger, and it can't travel very fast. It would take him 2 hours to get to us. So we were expecting to get there at about, or they were expecting that they would come for us at about 7:30. And then the next boat was going to take about 3 hours because we had taken the last boat that could take everybody. And they didn't want a smaller boat because of that place. You know, it was a dangerous place to have a small boat. So my father decided that he would paddle. And you can imagine paddling an engined boat. You know, it was tough. It was crazy. This is one of the other part of the whole story that I find very intriguing. So we finally met the dredger. Instead of 2.5 hours later, we met the dredger 2 hours later. So my father had paddled a boat enough distance to eat up 30 minutes of travel that the boat would have on the other side. And the dredger was like a 4-story building, you know, the compartment where human beings or where the operators could stay. Every other part of it was engine, you know, big, you know, you dredge up sand, you store it, and then go and pour it on land, right? So, but we had to climb. There was metal ladders welded to the body of this thing, and it was 3-story building. So my father had to take everyone in his family up one after the other. I was the second to the last because I was the boy, and then my sisters, my mom, all went. And it was funny watching my dad. He came from office and he didn't change, so he went straight from office to. And I remember when he was getting, he said, "Why am I wearing a tie?" He removed the tie, he gave it to my mom to put in the bag, and so when we were now going up, he asked my mom for that tie because he would carry us like, you know, a kangaroo would carry a child. Then he would tie us with the tie, you know, so that we wouldn't fall. And he would put our legs inside his pants, then use his belt without the belt holder and tie us into his pants because he was climbing 3. You know, it took him about 5 minutes to just climb because at some point he would get tired, and I was watching him do that. So you can imagine we met at about 7:40 something. I remember that clearly. I got up at 11. That's how long it took for all of us to get up there. But mosquitoes had eaten most of my body that was bare, my face. I had big balls of mosquito bites on my face, and my father's arms everywhere were just horrible mosquito bites, ant bites, and stuff like that. But it was such an experience that even though it was tragic, even though it was dangerous, it left me with just that huge impression of who my father was. I saw his physical strength. I saw his emotional strength. I saw his decision to be a guard for his family. And that hasn't left me, even though it's almost about 45 years ago, but that hasn't left me, and that has made such a huge impact in my life on what the responsibilities of a leader or of a man are. And I think this story is something that will bless anybody who hears it. And it's my mom, we tease her and say she sang all the songs in the Ancient and Modern from page 1 to, and then nowadays she would tell us, it's good to know those songs, you know, by heart, you know, or else what would you do, you know, if you don't know what to sing or don't know what to say, you know, it's good to know those songs by heart. It's good to, you know, so when in those days when we tease her, she would kind of feel shy and stuff like that. But today, if you tease her about it, she say, at least I know the songs, you know, that kind of a thing. What would you sing if you don't know the songs? And the lesson I get from some of what my mom went through and how she responded, and you know, even this response of at least I know the song is in so many ways we are not prepared. The battle that defeats you is the battle you weren't prepared for. The battle that defeats you is the battle you're not prepared for. That was one of the first things I learned from my mother in that whole episode. The second thing I learned from my mother, and I didn't learn it then, it's just recently that it made such a huge impact to me when I figured this out. And what I figured out was, I asked myself, what would my mother have done, or what else could have been a reaction from my mother? And there are many other reactions. She could have panicked, and a lot of us panic when things go wrong. You don't help a leader. You don't help, there's this saying, if you are rocking the boat, you're not paddling. If you're paddling, you have no time to rock the boat. You can't do two at the same time. And a lot of us coming into life or play a role in life where we are helping. We are with somebody, and sometimes your response can either help or destroy the ability to energize and engender strength and proper response. So my dad always says that whether he was in the front of the boat or the back of the boat, just the voice of my mother singing was what told him everything was okay. Because he said, if she started crying, then I'll know I'm in trouble. That kind of a thing. So that was a huge lesson from him. But recently, one of the things I've learned again too is, if you're crying, you're not fighting. This was very huge for me. If you are crying, you are not fighting. And most of the times when we go through stuff, what happens is, we think our cry is a response. We think our cry is engagement. And sometimes crying is engagement because you're engaging God. You're telling God how you feel based on what you're going through. But in a deeper sense of it, if you're crying, you're not fighting. You have to stop crying, switch gears, to be able to now start fighting, to be able to engage. And by fighting, I don't literally mean whether spiritual warfare, physical warfare, or any kind of warfare. I just mean you haven't gotten up with the resolution that I'm going to beat this. I'm going to do better. I can overcome this. As long as you are crying, you're not fighting yet. That was one of the lessons I learned from. Now I see that and I look at it and I'm like, wow. My mom wasn't crying, but she sang a lot of songs, and to be frank, I was an Anglican with my mom then, but then I gave my life to Christ about 4 or 5 years after that. And what happened was, I still, till today, know a lot of Anglican hymns, and because my mom knew them by heart, and she would make us sing them once looking at the book, and the next time without looking at the book. And so those songs became a very integral part of my life growing up, singing and praying. And now I know that even in worship, if you're crying, thoughts might drop into your heart, but the thought that engages you is the thought you intentionally activate, and you won't do it if you're crying. So those were three huge lessons I learned from that episode with my family that hasn't left me, and it just seems like every day something new comes out of it. Every day I learn a new thing from it, and I'm like, wow, if you're crying, you're not fighting. But thanks for the opportunity.